we'll go ahead and start this. It's not going to be a long presentation, but it's definitely going to be a presentation filled with value, because honestly, these are the exact same steps that I use to get myself out of $60,000 worth of debt. And I realized the important part. Hey, we got more people coming. Don't worry that you haven't missed much. We're just about to get started. We like to give everybody a couple of minutes. But just give me a 1 in the chat if you hear my audio. I want to make sure that everybody here hears me. At least one person. Let's see. Perfect. That's all that matters. Perfect. All right. So today we're going to be talking about what I like to call advanced debt repayment strategies. And the reason I call these a little bit of advanced strategies is because we really dive deep into the two things that hold you back, right? So, we have somebody else coming on. Perfect. Now it's a party. It's officially a party, guys. Look at this. It's officially a party for the community. All right. Perfect. So now let's get started. I think we have enough people on. We're going to be talking about advanced debt repayment strategies. And these are the exact same strategies that I use to get myself out of I think it's like $60,181 out of credit card debt. And because of this, right? And well, because of this. And I've used that strategy to get myself out of debt. I've used that strategy to get other people out of debt. And most importantly, I've used that strategy to get clients out of debt. So I've seen both sides of it, right? So I'm going to really be breaking down both situations that are very common. One situation I see more than the other one is people have a ton of debt, but they still have a decent credit score, because the only thing holding them back is really that utilization. Then I have on the other hand, you have certain people who basically already have these accounts in charge-off status, and they're just stuck in credit card debt or just paying back original creditors, and they're just in that cycle. So I'm going to break down both of them in this video. So advanced debt repayment strategies. It really all depends on what stage of the journey you're in, right? You really got to take into consideration if debt is the only thing holding your score back. Remember, there's about 5 factors of credit. Debt is really the second highest factor of credit. The highest one is not utilization, payment history, right? So it does matter a lot to your credit score. I've seen plenty of times, and I posted these on social media, plenty of times you'll notice that some people, they don't even need credit repair. They just need to pay off their balances. And if those are the clients are in front of me, I don't take them on as clients. And I basically just give them these exact strategies. That way they can implement it and improve their scores without having to pay a credit repair company, right? So the first one is that the only thing holding you back? Or do you already have some negative items reporting on your credit report? So it's very important that you understand what stage of the process you're in, whether that is the only thing holding you back, or it's that plus the account's already charged off. Maybe you have some late payments, anything that might prevent you from basically getting some of the products that we're going to be talking about. So if the only thing holding you back is basically high credit card balances, I would look into getting debt consolidation loans. Now, before I lose everybody, because I always lose people when I start talking debt consolidation loans, and I'll explain why. And after this lesson, you'll understand why too, so you can avoid that dark spiral of debt consolidation loans, right? And I want you not to confuse debt consolidation loans with debt settlement. And I don't want you to confuse debt settlement and debt consolidation loans with debt consolidation companies, because a lot of consumers learn the differences the hard way. And I want to make sure that everybody in the community understands the differences, because like I was talking about it on my social media today, I'm not a big fan of telling clients not to pay off their debt, just because in some scenarios, that is the only thing that they have left to do to improve their scores. And I feel like if we don't talk about debt settlement or basically paying off old balances, what ends up happening is you never have that communication with the client, and you're doing your client a disjustice because you're not opening up that little window of opportunity that they may have to have better scores. You're focusing mostly on the disputes, and I think personally, I think you're doing your client a disjustice if you do that. So What's the difference? Like what's the big difference between a debt consolidation loan, debt settlement, and debt consolidation companies? I'm going to break it down for you guys, right? A debt consolidation loan is basically a loan that you get from an established bank such as SoFi, Discover. I'll talk more about the banks that you can get a little bit later, but you're actually getting an actual loan with an interest rate, terms, how much you're going to get up front. It might have an origination fee. It might have a bunch of things, but it's an actual loan that gets deposited either directly to your bank account or they pay the creditors back directly, right? So that's a debt consolidation loan. Don't confuse that with debt settlement, which debt settlement is just the process of negotiating your old balances with original creditors or collection companies. So when you're getting let's say a 50% discount, let's say for example, you talk to Capital One and you owe them $600 and you basically negotiated that down to, let's say, $200 with a four payment term. What you're doing there is you're doing the debt settlement process. You're settling a debt with an old creditor. Don't confuse that with a debt consolidation loan, and I'm going to explain to you why some people get it confused. The third one, which is right here, is oh my God, they're the bottom of the barrel. They're debt consolidation companies. And they have led to consumers misunderstanding all of these things right here for years. Why? Because one, do debt settlement close accounts. You see, that's what I was talking about. That's one of the misinformations that debt consolidation companies bring out there, right? So now remember, like we spoke about this in the previous lesson, debt settlement can only happen after the account goes 180 days delinquent, right? I used to work for debt consolidation in Rescue Financial, man. Oh, so correct me if I'm wrong on any of this, man. So so basically, by the time you perform debt settlement, the account would have been closed out already. The account would have been completely closed out already. So debt settlement is not what closes accounts out. Debt settlement is a process that can only happen after the account gets closed out. Now, when you're dealing with debt consolidation companies, usually they'll use this strategy to generate leads. And the strategy that they usually use is they'll go out there and they'll claim, hey, I'll use Ryan, for example, because Ryan has worked in one of these companies. Hey, Ryan, we see that you have a $10,000 balance on these credit cards. You actually pre-qualify for a debt consolidation loan. So then you'll go apply for the debt consolidation loan, and then they'll tell you, oh, sorry, we actually made a mistake. You don't qualify for the debt consolidation loan. But what we can do is we can consolidate all your debts in-house. The thing that you have to do is you have to stop paying the original creditors and you have to start paying us that same amount. What usually happens is that they'll take that amount, right? They'll take that amount that you pay them every single month. You have to offer you a loan first and do a beta street. Also, that's a legal thing. That's crazy. I always thought it was just like a marketing thing for them. Legally have to offer and do the bait and switch. So you see, it's a very common tactic in the debt consolidation space. So now, once you have like, they keep your money in escrow, right? So let's say you were paying the original creditor $200-300 every single month. Now they're going to tell you, stop paying the original creditor, right? Stop paying them. Why? Because debt settlement cannot happen until the account is 180 days late in charge-off status. So debt consolidation companies will tell you, stop paying the original creditor. Some of them won't even explain to you the effects that that's going to have on your credit score. That's why I'm not a big fan of them, right? They'll tell you, oh, don't worry about it. You'll be able to keep that relationship. You won't, right? So the debt consolidation companies, they'll hold the money in like an escrow account. And then once they have enough money to actually settle these debts, they'll go ahead and settle those debts on your behalf. And either they'll keep the remaining amount of money or they'll take a big percentage of the amount that was settled. So the reason I'm not a big fan of debt consolidation companies is because I feel like they're a little sleazy and they have a lot of tactics that really aren't for the consumer's good, honestly. Like they don't explain for the client. they're hungry for sales, they take 20% of the total amount you owe. Very sleazy. You see, they take 20% of the total amount that you owe, and that's on the company that Ryan used to work in, right? I've seen horror stories with these debt consolidation companies. They don't care about, they'll sell you the dream, right? And that's why you have people who I tell them, hey, let's get you into a debt consolidation loan with Discover. And they'll tell me, oh, I don't want to do a debt consolidation loan because I want to keep my credit card open and I don't want to ruin my credit score because I know debt consolidation loans hurt your credit score. And it's like, you're confused. You're confusing debt consolidation companies and a debt consolidation loan. So debt consolidation companies, they basically hold the money for you, right, in an escrow account. And then once you have saved up enough money, they actually do the debt settlement for you. I personally feel like you can do the debt settlement yourself, honestly, and then just open up your own high yield savings account. And we'll talk more about that a little bit later in the presentation. So if the only thing holding you back is your high balances, then I would focus on two things. One, reducing the risk of the debt, and two, reducing the interest rate of the debt. So you might be thinking, what do you mean reduce the risk? What I mean by reduce the risk is you have to look at risk from a lender's perspective, right? Now, let's say you have it on a revolving credit card. Let's say you owe that card $5,000, right? How can the lender, in this case, like a bank, determine how much risk that is for you? Why? Because you can pay off that credit card next month and then use it again. Or you can pay off that credit card down 50% in March, and then in April, you ran it right back up again. It's a revolving debt, meaning it has no set end date, right? So in the lender's perspective, this is an extremely high risk debt, right? That's why when you're looking at the utilization rate, they're not considering the utilization rate from personal loans. They're only considering credit card utilization rates because that's the riskiest type of debt. It's unsecured, plus it's a revolving debt, meaning you can use it today, pay it off tomorrow, and then use it again today. Use it again the day after. Now, personal loans on the other side, they're less risky. Why? Because the bank can calculate how much you pay monthly. The bank can calculate when the end date is, and the bank can see in your credit report when you opened it, how many payments you've made on time, when is the last day that you're going to be paying this debt. So it's less risky, so it reflects that on your credit score, right? And what about the interest rate? So a lot of people don't realize this, right? Because they weren't taught this, and I wasn't taught this, and this is what led to me making the biggest credit mistake in my journey. I wasn't taught about interest rates, right? So interest rate is basically the amount of money they charge you for having that debt with the banks. Now, that's in super simple terms. I'll explain it in a more in-depth course that I have on just the topic of interest rates. So what you're going to do about lowering the interest rate? Simple. What you're going to do is you're going to look at all the cards that you currently have and write down what you owe on them exactly, the dollar amount. We're going to write down the dollar amount that you owe on those credit cards, right? Why? Because when you start talking to consumers, you'll realize most of them don't even know how much they owe. Why? Because they know it's such a big balance that they're scared to actually look at how much they owe. So it helps a lot once you finally see that monster in front of you and say, you know what, Edgar, I got myself into a hole. But this is the monster that I'm fighting right now, and I'm facing it on head first. So the first thing you're gonna do is you're gonna write down exactly what you owe on them, and they definitely don't know the interest rate they're paying exactly. So, and the second thing you're gonna do is you're gonna write down how much interest you're paying on this debt. So how do you find that? Extremely simple. You're gonna go to your statements, and in your statement, you'll be able to see exactly how much interest rate you're paying on that debt. So you're gonna write that down and you're gonna come up with the average, right? So let's say you have 4 credit cards, one at 25, one at 28, one at 29, one at 30. I would try to pick the middle number around there. maybe say 2930. That's the number that you're trying to beat. So now you know what monster you're facing because you know the debt amount, and then you also know how much interest you're getting charged for keeping that debt in the bank. And a lot of people, this is that little switch that goes on in their head, and they realize, wait a minute, I'm paying $300 every single month just for keeping this balance. It's exactly what happened to me. This is why I feel like this is really important. So in case you're wondering, why is this so important? Because debt is really attacking you from two sides, right? One side, you're probably not making enough money, so you start using your credit card for expenses. But the other side is just as hurtful. The other side is that you're getting charged interest every single month that you hold the balance, right? Every single month that you hold the balance, you're paying interest. Meaning, even if you don't spend money on that card, even if you put that card in the freezer, put water on it, and freeze it to death, it doesn't matter. Because the bank will spend that money, right? So to put this into perspective, when I was in $60,181 worth of credit card debt, the interest rate on that was 28.5%. The minimum payment I was making was $1,300 every single month. And out of that, $855 would go directly into the bank's pockets in the form of interest. Meaning the bank directly took $855 from me, and I was paying them $1,300. Crazy. So put a 1 in the chat if this would upset you. Imagine every month you're working, right? And you're getting charged $1,300 every single month, right? And then you make that minimum payment because you're struggling, right? You're struggling to just make the minimum payment. And then the bank takes $855. Yo, if you think about it, that's some people's rent on just interest. And it's crazy. That was the moment I realized, I was like, yo, I fucked up. I messed up, man. I looked at it and I was like, God damn. Why? Because I didn't mind the balance, like 60,000 at the time. Yeah, it was a huge balance, but it wasn't that crazy. But what really caught me was that 28% interest rate. That's what caught me. When I saw that I was paying the banks $855 in interest every single year, that's when it really started messing with me, man. Hey, what's up, Steve? Thanks for joining us. So basically, we're just talking about different things debt related. You'll catch the recording for the first half. We're not even too deep into the presentation, man. Thanks for joining us. So the first thing you have to focus on is lowering the amount of interest that you're paying, so that you keep making the same payment every single month, but more of it goes towards the amount owed, right? Because think about how much faster I would have paid off my debt if I would have been making $1,300 minimum payment every single month, and the whole amount was going towards the debt. Instead of 855 going directly towards the bank's pockets, I would have been able to pay the debt off a lot faster. So the question is not always, how do I make more money, right? Because trust me, I was flipping sneakers, I was working Uber Eats, I was finding side hustles, trying to make money, but it's not just about making more money. Because at that point, if you just focus on making more money and don't focus on lowering the interest rate, you're hustling backwards at that point. Because the bank's always going to take those $855. Yeah, maybe next month they'll take a dollar less, but every single month they're going to get paid. So here are a few banks that I trust that do debt settlement loans. I mean, debt consolidation loans, right? Do not pass go and do not collect 200. So here's a few banks that I trust to do debt. I should have wrote consolidation. Is debt consolidation loans, not debt settlement loans, right? Here's a few banks. It's SoFi, which is my favorite. Discover, One Main Financial. One Main Financial is really the bank that I start using if the client's credit score isn't that great, but they have really good income, right? So I had a client with a 572, I believe, and he got approved for $10,000. He got approved for $12,000 actually, and it was because he was making a huge income. I think he used to work for Cisco. So One Main Financial is really that bank that you would go to if you make a ton of income, but your credit score is just in the gutter. The same for Best Egg, the same for Upstart. These banks, they actually do debt consolidation loans, right? What defines a ton of income? It's really the debt to income ratio. So it all depends on what you're asking for. So if you're only asking for 10,000, if you're only asking for $5,000, then making 50,000 is considered making a ton of money. But if you're asking for $50,000, then and you're only making 75,000, that debt to income just doesn't add up. So you may not get approved for that loan. How low does the credit score have to be to qualify? I've seen people, well, depends on what bank. With SoFi, it has to be like 650 around there. Discover around the same range. But if you start working with these two, right, they're the ones that are going to give you 13, 12, 11, 10% interest rates, right? Then there's the One Main Financial, right? One Main Financial, you'll be getting charged 18, 19, 20% interest, but that one, you only need like a 580 to qualify. I think it's the same with Best Egg and the same with Upstart, right? Thank you for dropping that link on the chat, Ryan. That's a DTI calculator, really good. So make sure that the interest rate, so when you're applying for these banks over here, right? Let's say you apply for SoFi or Discover, and let's say you drove down all the amount of credit cards that you owed, and let's say you came up with the fact that it's 27%, right? So now your goal, remember, you have two things to do. You want to reduce the risk of that debt, and you want to reduce the risk of that debt, and you want to lower the interest rate, right? The second you move it from revolving debt to installment, that's when you're reducing the risk of that debt. Now, to focus on the interest rate, you want to make sure that the interest rate of this new loan, the debt consolidation loan, is at the bare minimum equal to what you're paying in credit cards. Now, you might be wondering, why equal? I thought the point was to lower the interest rate. Well, keep this in mind. The goal was to do two things: lower the risk of the debt, and the second thing is to lower the interest rate. The second that you get that consolidation loan, the second you get approved for that, you're lowering the risk. So at least you did one of the two. Maybe you didn't lower the interest rate the first time, but you'll see what we do after. But preferably, you want to do a lower interest rate. So although the bare minimum is equal, you do want to at least lower the interest rate. If you successfully get a loan to pay off your credit cards, once the cards report in paid off status, your score will automatically shoot up, right? If that's the only thing holding your score back, your score will automatically shoot up. And this potentially, but you could do both and refi. Exactly. So potentially opening up the opportunity to a lower interest rate. Because remember, right? Let's go back to these banks, right? Let's go back to these banks. Now, let's say, for example, we have SoFi, Discover, One Main Financial, Best Egg, and Upstart. A strategy that I commonly use for my clients is we'll go for One Main Financial because their score just isn't there yet, but they have the income. Let's say it's $10,000. We'll go to One Main Financial and we'll get the first loan, right? And then the second that those credit cards get reported as in paid off status and the score shoots up, let's say it shoots up to 680, 690, 700, then maybe right away, I'll go and apply for Discover or I'll go and apply for SoFi. Remember, they both have pre-qualification tools. So it doesn't hurt to really check. Your score is different at this point because remember, the first time you applied, you had revolving debt, right? So since revolving debt is more risky, your score was going to be lower. But now that debt got removed from the revolving side into the installment side, the debt is a lot less risky, which improves your credit score. As long as that is the only thing holding your score back. No late payments, no collections, no charge-offs. So a strategy that I commonly use for my clients is we'll go for One Main Financial over here. We'll get that installment loan, right, to pay off the credit cards. And then maybe right away, based on where the score goes, we'll go for Discover, we'll go for SoFi, right? Because maybe up front, let's say I'm paying 28% on the credit cards. Maybe One Main gets me at 28%. But then, why? Because I'm applying with a 560. I'm applying with a 580. But now that my credit score shot up because I paid off all my credit card balances and the debt is less risky, now maybe I'll get approved with Discover. Maybe I'll get approved with SoFi for 25, 24, 23% interest rate. Basically, the point is to do those two things. I never said you had to do those two things right away. So once the card gets paid off, your score will automatically shoot up, potentially opening up the opportunity to get a lower interest rate. So every 6 months, right, I would apply for a new debt consolidation loan to try and lower the interest rate. So even if at first I'm paying 28% on the credit cards and I get to match it with the debt consolidation loan, next month I'm going to try, well, in the next 6 months, I'm probably going to try to get that from 28 to 25 to 22, then to 19. And we'll talk about what we do after the end, right? Once the balance is under $5,000, if your score is good enough, I would consider going after 0% APR cards in the States. That way you knock it down from 28 all the way down to 0. That's best case scenario. So yes, only do this if the balance is low enough, like I don't know, $5,000. Why? Because the second you move that debt back to the credit card, your score is going to shoot down. But it's fine. It's fine because once you finish paying off that card, now that your total monthly payments are going towards the balance and you finish paying off those cards, right? You finish paying off those cards, then that's it. Your score will shoot up again and you're debt free. Let me see. But just got one of my clients for $7K today to pay off debt, 20 months BOA card. You see, it's perfect. It's perfect. So now, what about if you already have late payments and the accounts are charged off? Because some people are in that previous situation we spoke about. Some people are in this situation, right? They have late payments, they have collections, and they have high credit card balances, right? Well, your score already took a hit, so you wouldn't get approved for much, right? I'm assuming that the account already went to charge off at this point. So the good news is that your debt shouldn't be too hard to negotiate. In some people's cases, they're actually in a better situation that the account is charged off than the other people who are actually still making their payments on time. Now, I'm not advising to stop paying your credit cards, right? Because that leads you into a whirlwind of trouble, and I don't want to get into that. But the good news is that if you already let that credit card go to shit and you already stopped paying it, it shouldn't be too hard to negotiate once it's in paid off status. So when the debt is charged off already, if you don't plan on going through the dispute process, right? Paying off debt is something that I only recommend. And even as part of my process, paying off debt is the back end of the process. After we've done the disputing, after we've done the pre-litigation, after we've done the Metro 2, that's when we focus on debt settlement. But if you feel like, I don't want to go through the dispute process, I just want to pay off my old debts, I don't care if the items stay on, I'll build on top of it, cool. If you don't plan on going through the dispute process, when the debt is charged off already, if you don't plan on going through the dispute process, then what I would do is this personally. And it's the same thing that debt consolidation companies do, but instead of working with that consolidation company and them controlling the money, I would rather you do the debt consolidation yourself. Because at the end of the day, debt consolidation is just that. They're putting it into an account, and then once you have enough money saved up, they go ahead and they do the whole debt settlement process. So I would open up your own high yield savings account, find those accounts that pay 5, 10, no, I think it's like 4 or 5% interest every single month, and put your money in that account, right? And start depositing money in there every time you get paid. Once you have enough money to pay off the debt, I would start negotiating. So let's say, for example, in this case, let's say you have $2,000 saved up. I would call all the creditors on your credit report and lowball them. Don't be afraid. For example, if you owe Capital One $6,000, I would offer them $2,000. What's the worst thing they can say? No? If they tell you, we don't take it, then okay, you hang up. That's it. If they tell you no, you hang up. Now, because what happens if they tell you yes? Now you got a 66% discount on your debt. Don't be afraid. I know so many people who are afraid to look silly in front of the banks. The banks don't care about you. The banks don't know who you are. They don't care about you. Trust me. Trust me. I'll put money on the line that I care more about you than the bank does. That's all I'll say, right? You'll be surprised how often they take it if the account hasn't been paid off in a while, right? Then you rinse and repeat. Keep in mind, every single bank is different. So for example, a bank like Chase will give you an 80% discount, while a bank like Discover might only give you a 60 or a 50 or a 40, right? Some banks you might get lucky with, and they'll even remove the item off the credit report after payment, right? This is known as a pay for delete. But if this is part of the negotiation, try to get it in writing. Why? Because these banks and collection companies, they tend to lie a lot. You'd be surprised. These collection companies will tell you anything and everything to get you to pay, right? The only thing they won't do is give you an 80% discount on the debt, right? Unless you're Chase. So while you're paying off your old debt, you should also be trying to establish positive payment history. What I notice a lot of people don't do in the credit repair space is they'll go ahead and they'll pay off all their debt, but because they feel like they won't get approved for credit, they hold off establishing credit until the back end of the process, right? Why would you do that? Get a secure credit card, get a self-installment loan, get a savings secured loan from Navy or PenFed or any bank that does it, and then establish that positive payment history as you're paying off your balances, right? So that once the last debt gets paid off, your score will see a nice increase. Now, why do I say once the last debt is paid off? This has led to a huge misconception in the credit repair space that paying off debt doesn't improve your score. There's some validity to that. But in reality, what happens is your score won't see a major score increase until the last unpaid debt is paid off on your credit report. So until that last collection is paid off to zero, or until that last charge-off account is paid off to zero, you won't see a big boost on your score, right? So to give you an example, I had a client who we had like 4 charge-off accounts. When we paid off the first one, we saw a 2-point increase. The second one, we saw a 2-point increase. The third one, we saw a 5-point increase. The last one, we saw a 68-point increase. Think about that, 68 points. So you would have thought, why would I pay off the debt? I only get 2 points. Why would I pay off the debt? I only get 2 points. Why would I pay off the debt? I only get 5 points. Well, now you pay off the last debt, you get a 68-point increase. Now remember, everybody's case is different. Everybody has a different credit report, so your miles might vary, as they say in the travel side. So once the last debt gets paid off, your score will see a nice increase. So now, Edgar, what if you can't get a loan and you're stuck paying off credit cards? Well, you're going to use one of these 2 debt repayment methods. You're either going to use the debt snowball method or the debt avalanche. So what's the difference? I'm going to do a whole masterclass on just the debt snowball versus the debt avalanche. I'm even going to go into other debt repayment methods or budgeting methods known as zero-based budgeting. I actually have somebody in mind that I want to bring onto the community, and I want them to explain what zero-based budgeting is, because remember, education is a big part of the process of doing credit repair. And the reason why a lot of people aren't in debt is because they don't know how to manage their finances. So I want to bring a bunch of people who know how to manage their finances and can teach the community, right? So what's the difference? Debt avalanche and debt snowball. With debt avalanche, you're basically paying off debt and you're prioritizing the interest rates. So you don't really care about the balances of each card. You care about how much each card is charging you in interest. So if you have a card that's charging you 28% interest, and you have a card that's charging you 30, you're going to pay the credit card that's charging you 30% interest more, right? You're going to want to pay that off faster. So you're basically paying off debt with the highest interest rate first. And then once you pay off that first debt, then you're going to move on to the next highest interest rate debt after the first one is paid off. And then basically little by little, you're paying off less interest. So it's kind of causing like a whole avalanche. Then there's this debt snowball repayment method, which prioritizes balances, right? So it basically works by paying off the smallest debt first, and then you move on to the next big one. And then little by little, you notice like it basically works like this. If I paid off the $100 credit card, I can pay off a $300 credit card. And if I paid off a $300, I can pay off a $1,000 credit card. And it builds off that momentum. Now, The reason why these two are effective, and they both work, it really all depends what type of person you are. Why? The debt avalanche is more of a numbers approach to debt paying, like to paying off debt is really just like a numbers approach to it. But then you always got to remember, personal finance is personal, and personal finance involves humans, which are very emotional creatures. So that snowball works best for some people. Why? Because it's more of a psychological thing, right? While that avalanche is more of a logical thing that actually uses numbers to calculate to calculate how you can pay less interest over time. That snowball, on the other hand, uses an emotional thing where it's like, if I paid off that first credit card, I can pay off that second one. And you build up momentum like a snowball, right? So now that's it. Now, do you guys have any last minute Q&As before we end this call? Like I always